Hear ye, hear ye! American Players Theater and Spring Green won the 2026 Regional Tony Award. APT is a theater located in the woods about 20 miles from Madison with a 1,075-seat outdoor Hill Theater and a 200-seat indoor Touchstone Theater. The summer season is now playing through October 4th with 8 plays in a rotating repertory. This week, you can use code CITY20 for 20% off any performance in the Outdoor Hill Theater. Tickets and information at AmericanPlayers.org or by calling 608-588-2361. Need a new car? The Society of St. Vincent de Paul is hosting a car raffle fundraiser to raise money for their Madison Food Pantry, Pharmacy, Micro-Lending Program, and other services that help local families. That's right, you can buy tickets now for a chance to win one of 5 brand new vehicles. They've got 2026 Hondas, Nissans, and 1 Mazda. Tickets are $100 each and only 5,000 will be sold. Find more details on the cars and buy tickets at svdpmadison.org/raffle. This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, Madison's Police Civilian Oversight Board and Office of the Independent Monitor has been a lightning rod for scrutiny since its inception back in 2020. And it's back in the news. The city is trying to change how it functions, and the independent office has thoughts. So where does it stand now? Joining me is the interim independent police monitor, Arameek Glass. Mika, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Madison's Office of the Independent Police Monitor was created in 2020 to serve as an independent watchdog of the Madison Police Department. Madison's first monitor was hired in late 2020 and resigned last year after what many would argue a fairly turbulent tenure. You came into this position late last year. How would you describe the state of the office today?
So we are in a state of the foundation was laid when I got here. Everything had to be expedited. And we are in a position where we're seeing what we need. We're seeing what we should have had and didn't have, and where we're ultimately trying to go. We have closed the first cases in history. So we're at 9 closed cases. When I came on board, we had a backlog of 18. And then since I've come on board, we're averaging about 2 cases per month of people filing new cases. And so while trying to manage what wasn't done before and what needs to be done in real time, it's a lot of work, but the progress has been made. We released our annual report, which was the first annual report that talked about the cases, that talked about the needs, that provided all of the recommendations for the work being done. And also just to mention, we have an extremely tight budget. And so we have been also doing this manually with 2.5 staff, only 1.5 of me and my data analyst, who is part-time, are the only ones that do the cases. And we're doing that manually because we don't have a case management system, and making sure that we get the budget and the resources to be able to get that case management system that we're close to. So we're in a much better place than we were 6 months ago.
And when you're talking about cases, is that something from, a Madisonian, it reaches out and wants you guys to look into something further? Like, what is a case that comes to y'all?
Cases can be filed any kind of way. So you can file a complaint against Madison PD with our office. Anybody who has experienced Madison policing and there was an issue, whether it's regarding your arrest, whether it's regarding your child's arrest, whether it's regarding something that you seen concerning in the community, we have anonymous complainants. So anyone can file a complaint. We're going to add accommodations as well when we get that case management system. But what it looks like is there's a couple of pathways. And the first pathway is depending on the classification. So say it's an arrest and there was a situation where your stuff got stolen, I would send that over to internal affairs. Internal affairs would then do an investigation. They would render that investigation back over to me. I would review it, and then I would make my own additional recommendations, and those go to the chief for either disciplinary action or policy change. The second pathway is that if there's a use of force case or an officer involved shooting, a critical officer involved incident, or an excessive force issue, that would ultimately be an independent investigation that stays with me. I do the entire investigation. I render independent findings. And then if it warrants being taken to the PFC, which is the Police and Fire Commission. They are charged with hiring or terminating the chief of police, and they have powers. If the chief doesn't take action on something, it can be taken to the PFC. And so we have the ability to appoint attorneys to complainants that I deem necessary, and that can be taken to the PFC for that action. And then the third is alternative resolution. So that's either mediation or restorative justice.
Okay. And when you say critical incident, is that something bad seems like it might have happened, basically?
Yes. Someone was harmed. Someone went to the hospital. Somebody got bit by a dog, a police canine, those types of incidents. Yes.
The city of Madison, developed this office, decided that this is a useful tool and something that our city didn't have. And there's been a lot of ups and downs for the office, as we discussed, like questions about what is getting done. It sounds like you are operating, you are managing, getting through complaints, and that a lot has changed in these past 6 months. But what exactly is the charge of the office and what the office looks like at its best?
Well, so I think the mandate of the office, I'll say that what the mandate is, and then I'll say what the vision, the goal is, where we want to end up. The mandate is to obviously do the investigations, release the findings, hold law enforcement accountable. So offer those disciplinary recommendations, fight to get officers terminated if that's what's necessary. Release all of the information to these families and to the complainants so that if further justice is needed on their end, they have the resources and they have the truth and the facts, right? That is the mandate. But on top of that is to analyze all parts of policing. I always say when you create public health, you create public safety. So my job also, in coming from, public safety reform and policing reform, my insight is also what are the tools and things that we can put in place to reduce police presence in the community and to ensure that the community and the public still feel safe. Where are the places that we need law enforcement the most, and how do we keep them there, right? There are so many things that law enforcement is doing that is not their job and should not be their job. This office is also about analyzing that and making sure that we're holding folks accountable. Police ultimately are enforcing the policies that the alders and the mayors and all of these folks vote on and put forth, right? And it's also about holding them accountable. When you are pushing and passing policy, how is it being implemented? So when people think about this office just being about policing, I would say, no, it's about public safety as a whole, because we have law enforcement doing things that they should not be doing. And so it's also about creating recommendations to increase something like the CARES team. The CARES team does an amazing job, and they're going out to calls, but they don't do certain calls. And so one of my recommendations was to make sure that there's a more comprehensive CARES team that has the ability to go out to the scene when a person might be combative or violent with no weapon. And these people feel comfortable and are trained to go out there instead of law enforcement, right?
Right. And for folks who don't know, the CARES program has just been so massive in Madison, and it's having a mental health professional coming to the scene rather than putting all of the responsibility on how to respond to an incident on an armed police officer.
To your point, like it's, when police show up, there are cases where people dealing with mental health crises are killed, or are put in certain restraints, and those restraints ultimately lead to significant harm. And so all of these things are thinking of ways in which we can create public safety, but we have to reimagine and also understand that public safety does not equate to policing, right? And so that's part of what this office does, is how do we address harm in a way that helps and furthers the community?
You alluded to this, but, I think people are wondering, like, what is functioning at this moment? Do y'all have the systems that you need? And you kind of identified that there's some missing spots in what you are hoping to accomplish as an office, like what your charge is and what resources you have to get that done.
Right. So I think that's a great question, because when we're talking about hiring the permanent independent police monitor, I was initially supposed to be here for 6 to 9 months. Now I'm going to be here for 13 months. And when we had that conversation, I want to ensure and be realistic that what was done in the last 6 months was not realistic for other people, and that should not be the expectation, right? Anyone coming in this permanent position should have a case management system and should not have to process everything manually, right? Especially if you have a backlog and you have a very comprehensive mandate, right? And robust process and system. Secondly, we don't have independent counsel. Independent counsel is instrumental in the work that we do. Independent general counsel.
Meaning legal representation.
Exactly. Right. Currently, right now, the way it was set up was that we would just use the city attorney. They are considered our legal counsel, but they also are the counsel for MPD. We need independent counsel. That is a huge part of independent civilian oversight, police oversight, right? And so there cannot be conflicts. There might be a case where somebody might have to bring a lawsuit because of their complaint, and our findings, support that. There's so many different things where we are inherently in a conflict of interest, and we need the resources to be able to get general independent counsel for the office and for the board, as well as, while we have a $50,000 legal services, it's all out of our purchase services. And the issue with that is I'm having to pull money, which is okay right now because the $50,000 has never been used in the history of the office being in existence. But also before, it was not taking complaints. Complaints just opened up in 2025 and started to be actually processed and closed once I came. So just to put that in perspective, the city got back $1.6 million because this is a use it or lose it city. And so I'm asking for the mayor to give us that 1.6 back, so that I'm not having to pull from the legal fund, which is particularly, that's separate from independent counsel. That's for the complainants when an attorney needs to be appointed. And so right now we're pulling for experts, consultants, all of the things that are needed for this office because we are just, 3 staff. We have to lean on consultants and other entities. And so it's all coming out of me scratching these pennies together and tapping into this complainant legal fund as well.
Literacy is the moment. Madison Reading Project's mission is to connect our community with free books and literacy resources that ignite a love for reading and affirm and reflect the diversity of young readers. And they truly put on one of the coolest events of the year, and that's happening this week. Every year, Madison Reading Project hosts a paper fashion fundraiser to support children's book access and free literacy programs called Red E to Wear. And the creativity is unmatched. Ready to Wear is this Thursday, June 11th, from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Sylvie. This year's theme is Out of This World. Don't miss getting your tickets today at madisonreadingproject.com/readytowear2026. And gather your best mates. You get the best ticket price when you buy a 4-pack. So go get your friends together and enjoy this one-of-a-kind evening. I refer folks to a 31-page memo that you put out to the city in response to a proposal to subject your office to city administrative procedures. That's that independence, how you guys can operate and get what you need done with the city. And that proposal sparked an hours-long discussion at the Madison Common Council. And a memo coming from your office that said, in part, quote, city leadership and staff orchestrated false statements about the office and its staff.
I think the conversation is very nuanced with an ordinance that's this powerful, this strong. I think when it wasn't working well, it was let's dismantle it because it's not working well. And folks allowed it not to work well to prove its point, right? But now that it is working well and folks see what it can do and the power that it has, this is too much. Let's change the ordinance is what you were referring to. And let's make these amendments to take away some of this power.
Yeah, and y'all are in the muck of it. You're building something new. And what you just shared is it's starting to work. And now the city is coming in trying to have you work more under their wing.
Exactly. So in that same meeting where I sent the day I sent out the memo, that evening, Alder Carmela Glenn kind of asked me and I was very upset at the time because I can work through anything, but I can't work through lies. That's where I'd kind of draw the line. With the police and with the city, I don't care who it is. I'm the same way, but I was pretty upset. But she asked, would we be willing to come to the table to have the conversation, to kind of work through these very nuanced things that they didn't have the ability to work through before because things were not moving forward, right? And so I will acknowledge that I have been working at a rapid pace. I have to, right? No one has acknowledged that I've only been here for less than 6 months. No one has acknowledged that things were not operating or functioning before I got here. And being a Black woman, that is not something I can use as an excuse or as a way in which I can say, hey, y'all, give me some more time. And so while other folks are saying I'm moving too fast, I'm also showing that government doesn't have to be drawn out and I'm not going to conform to what folks say government is, right? If we're serving the community, we need to do that effectively and efficiently.
And it's also a complaint that the office has had to face is, what have you gotten done in the amount of time that you have? So you walked into a crunch right away.
Exactly. And it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I appreciate Alder Glenn. I appreciate Alder Julia. I appreciate Alder Barbara McKinney, who I know Barbara was on the other end, not in the lack of support of the office, but wanting to get BWC body-worn cameras. And because the office had not produced, thinking that you could take from this office to get that. And I'm always saying it's not either or, it's both and, right? We need BWC. And that's another thing of doing all of these cases, not only manually, but also without BWC, right? And so coming from other large cities and having all of the tools that are needed, Normally the battles are just between like police unions and the police and all of those things. And here, everywhere I turn, there's a battle because of the lack of resources, the lack of infrastructure, and then also folks now wanting to control something when they can see how it's working. But we do have some alders that are working with us, and we're coming back to the table to really look at where we can strengthen the ordinance, not dilute, not dismantle, not, take away the powers, but actually make it stronger. And I appreciate the alders that have come to the table to really have those hard conversations and work with the community and not against us.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for folks to understand. So this ordinance is basically the language that helped craft the office and put into motion there being the Office of the Independent Monitor. When I spoke to your colleague, Greg Glubick, back in 2024, he said the same thing. This is one of the most empowered agencies of its kind in our country. And we have an opportunity to be a leader, which Madison loves to do. And I'm going to take a moment to talk about what's abundantly clear to me following your work, listening to you, having conversations and trying to build transparency around your work and the challenges that you're having. You are so deeply qualified. When you bring someone into a situation where you have two staff and you're behind and you have to prove yourself, it's a lot of pressure and scrutiny, and you're still chugging along and you're still holding the line. So thank you for that, firstly, because the city decided that this was an office that we wanted. And I also really want to hear more about your experience so people know who you are, knowing that you were the chief of police accountability in Baltimore. And this isn't your first rodeo. Like, what is your background in this work? And how are you seeing, if you can take that further, Madison's OIM and police oversight board stacking up to other agencies you've worked with and interacted with?
So you mentioned Baltimore, and I kind of just work backwards. So in Baltimore, there is a 3-prong system. So you have the civilian police oversight, you have the police accountability board, and you have the administrative charging committee, as well as trial boards. And you have a whole division. So I was over the entire division. And we didn't just have oversight of Baltimore PD. We had oversight of the sheriff's department. We had oversight of environmental police, school police, Hopkins University, Maryland University. Basically, if you were the police in Baltimore.
And that's John Hopkins, folks.
Yeah, that's John Hopkins. So there's similar elements, but each city is different. There's also an extra additional layer with Baltimore because Baltimore is under federal consent decree. So Baltimore has something also unique beyond its just normal oversight. All of that is state mandated, and every city has to fund it. And you have to fund it at the national best practice. So my budget there was $2.6 million. Well different from my pennies here. But the mandate of oversight looked a little bit different because of all of those agencies. I'm from San Diego, California. So I obviously worked in San Diego. I was the chairwoman for the Chief of Police Board of Advisors. I worked for the National Conflict Resolution Center. So really everything around public safety. I helped to create a community police handbook that was all around building trust. So a lot of my work in San Diego was really around public safety, criminal justice reform, violence intervention and prevention. We have high levels of gang culture, but we have police that are gangs in California, like literally in the police department gang. And so that was a lot of my work, is doing the oversight to ensure that we were reallocating money to other agencies and making sure that police were operating within those protocols. And within LA County, I was a program manager, and I had a good half of LA County's police, including like Long Beach, all of these top, police agencies under my oversight as well. I come from a very comprehensive background on doing this work, boots on the ground. I don't think I don't get to share this a lot, but I feel comfortable saying this out loud. When I'm talking about policing and I'm also looking and reviewing in investigations, I'm also coming from a community organizer, a community activist, an advocate around policy, did a lot of work around politics as much as I don't want to be a part of politics anymore. There's a little bit in the job, but I know this work from all different ends, and I've been arrested. And this is the part that I don't think people really understand or know. Like, I've been arrested more times than I can count. It's been recorded of me being harmed and brutalized by the police. And the way in which I chose to address those things after they happened, because I was in positions of power. And I played a very unique role in not just California, but particularly in my community in San Diego, because I didn't just go up against the police. I also found ways in which I could address harm with the police as well. And so that is why I have an equity-centered approach to the work. And that is why I also have a restorative approach when appropriate to the work. And I'll just lastly say, I talk a lot about the ecosystem in our annual report because I understand that police oversight does not just stop with policing. There's the district attorney that plays a huge part in this. There's the public defender that plays a part in this. But the district attorney has the ability to charge folks. And one of the reasons why, and we haven't seen this because people have been learning about my background, but one of the reasons why people sometimes have a distrust in oversight entities is because they know there is a possibility that retaliation can happen. And so we see across this country where police have killed people and the district attorneys don't bring charges because they are the entity that helped them prosecute across the board in this larger system. And so that's another, you guys will have to have me back one day and we can dive deep into the criminal justice and the ecosystem. But I think there's so many nuanced things that should be talked about in this.
You know, we've had the chief of police on the show who said that y'all have a good working relationship. And I know that you've spoken publicly that you have a good working relationship. You don't agree on everything, but you're able to be professional. But right now you're in the sauce. Like, you are in the muck of creating this entity. And the thing that I know about Madisonians, there's a lot of people with really great intentions, and it does come down to how is it playing out? You know, there are intentions and impact, and you're in a space where you're kind of singing for your dinner and you're dancing for your dinner, but the dinner is the outcome of having this office and putting a lot of work into it. And now you continue to hear folks out and about saying that the office should be shut down. And what do you say to that?
I think there is real willful ignorance, if I'm just being honest. Like, anybody who knows what's happening, or maybe doesn't know, but really has empathy for people other than themselves, right? And if you are in a place of privilege and you can understand that something may not be happening to you, but it's happening to so many other people. And that's from their lived experience, but also beyond lived experience, the data shows that as well, right? And so I say to folks, if they are allowing themselves to not read between the lines and not see that now that cases are being closed and investigations are taking place and findings are coming out, we have the police unions, we have the district attorneys, we have the police themselves that are going to do whatever they can, including up to city folks and attorneys who are trying to prevent things from coming to the forefront because of all of the wanting to discredit and dilute so that when these things come to the forefront and when investigations are closed, folks don't believe it. And it's been the complete opposite. There has been so many folks reaching out to say thank you. There's been so many folks saying, I was afraid to file a complaint, but after I've seen cases close, like, I need to come forth and say something. And so I think we need to be thinking about the least of these, the most vulnerable folks, the folks most impacted, and kind of sometimes have to check our privilege and say, I may not have experienced this, but people are experiencing this every single day. And what can I do to be a part of it? And if I don't understand it, let me go and learn more, or let me be quiet, right? And so that's kind of what I say to folks. But the willful ignorance here in this city cannot last. But there's so many people that's been reaching out, and I hear you all, and I'm grateful. Keep reaching out, and I'll keep responding.
Yeah, and you stepped into this role, as you said at the top, interim role, already moving to stay longer than you originally agreed on. It seems like you're very needed for this office to continue. I guess I'm curious, just what's next? You're in the muck. You're thinking about how to get out. You're lending your talents to the city. You were hired for a reason. Like, what's next? And any last thoughts you have for the people of Madison and surrounding areas who are listening?
So what's next is continuing. I appreciate folks showed up for the budget engagement, continuing to advocate for the needs of this office and the board. We're going to be doing some heavy engagement around hiring the permanent independent police monitor over the summer with communities so that we know what you all want, who you all want, and try to make sure that we do the best job to recruit that person and interview and all of that and go through that process. But also really just continuing to close out cases. I have a lot of work to do. Luckily you guys got a workaholic. So things are moving forward. We're digging out of the muck. We're finally in a good place. Things are happening. We should have our case management system in the next couple of weeks. I'm excited about some other things that are happening and some, announcements at the full board meeting that's on June 17th. So there's a lot of work being done. There's still a lot of work, to be had. And I hope that we can get this foundation laid so that we can build on top of that, right? And we don't have to go backwards and we can go forward. But just protect this office, protect this work, and be critical thinkers. That's all I say to the city is like, when something doesn't add up, and people are trying to say one thing, there's a reason behind it. And it's normally that people are trying to conceal and cover the truth and what needs to be done.
I want to ask a fun question because I want the opportunity just to know you, one of our newer public officials. Like, what's been one of your favorite parts of living in Madison so far?
Oh my goodness. Now that it's spring, summertime, I'm happy. It's a beautiful city. I'm just blown away by the beauty. I always say nothing beats San Diego, but Madison in spring, summer, I don't know. It's a really close call. So that's been wonderful of just being out and about in the beauty of the city.
Mika, we really appreciate you making the time to come on the show to talk about where the office is at today, some of the challenges and what you're hoping for moving forward. It means a lot, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
That's Arameek Glass, Madison Interim Independent Police Monitor. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. Don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Madison. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this episode with someone who is ready to stand in the uncomfortable conversations and get it done? All right, y'all. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care of each other, and thanks for listening.